Hello everyone, and welcome to my YNR Official 24 channel. Matt and Mariah, two people who believe their secrets were buried deep enough to stay hidden forever. Two lives built on carefully constructed lies that begin to crack the instant Ian's shadow stretches across the Newman skyline. And it all begins on an unassuming afternoon, when Mariah senses that familiar chill crawl up her spine, the same instinct she once had as a frightened girl trapped in Ian's manipulative orbit. A feeling she's tried to convince herself was just trauma resurfacing, until she turns and sees him, older, smugger, eyes gleaming with the same predatory intelligence, standing as if he owns the place, greeting her by name in that soft, poisonous tone that once controlled her entire world. And in that single second, Mariah knows that everything she's fought to become is in danger, because Ian doesn't just expose secrets, he dismantles identities. And what he knows about her is far more than Genoa City ever imagined. Meanwhile, Matt, who has spent months positioning himself as a man with nothing to hide, a charming operator skating effortlessly through social circles and business deals, suddenly finds his confidence unraveling as whispers begin to circulate. Anonymous tips, half-revealed truths, questions no one had thought to ask, each one carefully planted by Ian like a landmine, because Matt's past is not just messy, it's criminally intertwined with Mariah's darkest chapter. A chapter both of them agreed, silently and desperately, would never be spoken aloud. As Ian begins his slow, theatrical campaign, he starts by reminding Mariah who he made her believe she was, confronting her with details no one else knows. The false identity she once lived under, the messages she delivered without understanding their true consequences, the night she helped move money and people across borders under Ian's direction. Convinced she was protecting someone she loved when in reality, she was fueling a machine built on manipulation and psychological control. And as Mariah struggles to keep her composure, Ian makes it clear he's not interested in destroying her alone, because Matt, the man she trusted to help her bury that past, is far more culpable than anyone realizes. Flashbacks bleed into the present as the truth comes into focus. Matt wasn't just a bystander back then, he was a fixer, a man who knew how to clean up evidence, redirect suspicion, and silence witnesses. The one who ensured Mariah walked away free while others took the fall, and Ian knows every detail. Bank records, burner phones, coded emails, proof that Matt's hands are soaked in secrets darker than his charming smile ever suggested. Genoa City reels as Ian begins leaking pieces of the puzzle, not all at once, but strategically, forcing allies to question loyalties and lovers to doubt every word they've ever been told, and the tension reaches a boiling point when Mariah is confronted by those closest to her, their confusion cutting deeper than any accusation. Because how do you explain surviving a monster without admitting how deeply you were once trapped by him? How do you confess that the life you live now is built on choices made under coercion, fear, and manipulation? Ian, of course, thrives on this unraveling, openly taunting Matt in private meetings where he lays out the endgame with chilling calm. Expose Mariah completely or watch Matt's empire collapse piece by piece, revealing that the so-called accident years ago, the one Matt swore was a tragic coincidence, was in fact orchestrated to erase a loose end, a secret Mariah never knew, a secret that shatters the fragile trust between them when Ian ensures it reaches her ears. The emotional fallout is seismic as Mariah realizes the man who once promised to protect her actually decided he was expendable in order to save her, and as she grapples with guilt, rage, and heartbreak, Ian pushes further, exposing how Matt has continued to manipulate outcomes in Genoa City, subtly steering careers, relationships, and even legal decisions to keep his past hidden, revealing that the polished present was never clean, only cleverly maintained. Public confrontations erupt, alliances fracture, and the town becomes a pressure cooker of suspicion as Ian steps into the spotlight, no longer hiding in shadows, daring anyone to challenge him while holding the ultimate leverage. And when Matt finally snaps, attempting to discredit Ian as a delusional cult leader clinging to relevance, Ian responds with the most devastating reveal of all, a recorded confession from years ago. Matt's voice cold and calculating, discussing Mariah like a chess piece, proof that his love was never pure, only possessive. Mariah's world collapses in real time as she listens, the past and present colliding in a moment that defines her future, because Ian didn't just return to expose secrets. He returned to force Mariah to reclaim her narrative, to decide whether she will continue running from who she was or finally confront it head-on. And as Genoa City watches the fallout, one truth becomes undeniable. Ian Ward's return has permanently altered the landscape. Matt's carefully constructed life is in ruins. Mariah stands at a crossroads between shame and strength, and the secrets that once bound them together have become the weapons tearing them apart, leaving everyone to wonder not just what Ian will reveal next, but who in Genoa City will survive once the final truth is fully unmasked. And yet the nightmare does not end with the first wave of revelations, because Ian Ward never plays a short game, and as the dust from his initial return settles, he tightens his grip on Genoa City with the patience of a man who knows exactly how long to let fear ferment before it becomes desperation. And Mariah quickly realizes that what he exposed so far was merely the opening act. The cruel courtesy he extends before dismantling everything piece by piece, starting with her sense of safety. Because now she can feel eyes on her everywhere, at Crimson Lights, in the studio, even in the quiet moments at home where silence used to mean peace. Silence now screams danger, and each unanswered phone call feels like another threat waiting to surface, while Matt, spiraling under the weight of Ian's accusations, begins making reckless moves, trying to outrun a past that has finally learned how to chase him. Contacting old associates he swore he'd never speak to again, pulling favors that raise eyebrows, unknowingly validating Ian's claims with every panicked step. Ian watches it all unfold with detached amusement, orchestrating chance encounters and leaks that seem random but are anything but, ensuring that every revelation lands with maximum emotional damage, especially when he begins hinting at a second layer of betrayal, one that doesn't just involve Matt's crimes, but Mariah's stolen choices, because Ian insists she was never just a victim, planting the poisonous idea that some of her actions, even under coercion, cross lines that cannot be erased by remorse alone. This accusation cuts deeper than anything before, forcing Mariah to confront the most painful question of all. Where does survival end and responsibility begin? And as she wrestles with that truth, Ian introduces a new player into the chaos, someone from the past who is presumed gone, a witness who remembers Mariah not as the woman she is now, but as the girl Ian shaped, controlled, and weaponized. And the mere mention of this person sends shockwaves through both Mariah and Matt, because this witness knows about the night everything went wrong, the night Matt's accident narrative was born, the night someone disappeared and the official story never quite made sense. Genoa City becomes obsessed with speculation as rumors swirl, tabloids feast, and friends take sides, some defending Mariah fiercely, others questioning how much they truly know her. And this isolation is exactly what Ian wants. Because a divided support system is easier to break, and he proves it when he arranges a devastating public confrontation, forcing Mariah and Matt into the same room under the guise of reconciliation, only to reveal, with theatrical precision, that he is proof Mariah once signed documents she was told were meaningless, documents that tied her legally to operations she never fully understood, documents Matt later buried, not to protect her innocence, but to preserve his own. The betrayal hits Mariah like a physical blow as she realizes Matt's protection always came with conditions, that her freedom was negotiated behind her back, traded for silence and loyalty, and as her trust shatters, Ian presses harder, revealing that Matt has been paying off people for years to maintain that silence, money siphoned from legitimate businesses. Money that now traces directly back to crimes that could bring down far more than just him. Law enforcement begins circling, not because Ian reports anything directly, but because he understands the system well enough to let suspicion do the work for him, and soon subpoenas, quiet investigations, and tense interviews become the new normal, pushing Matt into a corner where every option leads to exposure, while Mariah faces a different kind of reckoning, one that demands she stop letting others speak for her past and finally tell her own story, even if it costs her everything. Ian, sensing her shift toward independence, escalates again, unleashing his cruelest move yet by revealing a secret Mariah never knew existed, that during her time under his influence, a child was born as collateral damage of his empire, a life altered forever by decisions made in that dark chapter, and while Mariah was never directly responsible, Ian frames it as blood on her hands, forcing her to confront the far-reaching consequences of manipulation and silence. The revelation shakes her to the core, awakening a resolve stronger than fear, because for the first time, Mariah sees through Ian's game completely. He doesn't just want revenge. He wants relevance, power, and control over narratives long after his cult has collapsed. And this clarity becomes her weapon as she begins to fight back, quietly gathering allies, comparing notes, reclaiming memories she once tried to forget, discovering inconsistencies in Ian's version of events that suggest even he is hiding something bigger, something that could finally neutralize him. Meanwhile, Matt's downfall accelerates as the pressure exposes fractures in his carefully curated persona, former partners turning on him, evidence resurfacing, and the realization dawning that Ian never intended to spare him, only to use him until he was no longer useful, culminating in a desperate confrontation where Matt confronts Ian directly, demanding to know what he really wants, only to hear the chilling truth. Ian doesn't want Matt destroyed. He wants him exposed, stripped of influence, forced to live with the consequences he's evaded for years, a fate worse than prison in Ian's twisted moral code. As Genoa City braces for the next implosion, Mariah steps into the spotlight on her own terms, choosing transparency over shame, strength over silence, and in doing so, she robs Ian of his greatest weapon, because secrets lose their power once spoken aloud, and while the fallout is messy, painful, and far from over, a shift occurs, public perception begins to soften, allies return, and Ian's grip loosens just enough to reveal the cracks in his armor, cracks Mariah intends to exploit, because this time, she refuses to be a pawn in anyone's game, setting the stage for a final reckoning where truth, not manipulation, will decide who survives the aftermath of Ian Ward's most dangerous return yet. As the town teeters on the edge of its collective breaking point, the consequences of Mariah's decision to step into the light ripple outward in ways no one can fully control, because truth, once released, does not move in straight lines. It collides with fear, loyalty, love, and regret, and Genoa City becomes a living echo chamber where every whispered opinion carries weight, every glance feels loaded with judgment or compassion. And Ian Ward, watching from the sidelines, realizes with cold fury that the narrative he believed he owned is slipping from his grasp, forcing him to adapt, to escalate, to remind everyone that he is still dangerous. His next move is subtler, almost surgical, targeting the fragile threads holding Mariah's rebuilt support system together, reaching out to those who have stood beside her and planting carefully chosen doubts, suggesting that her honesty is selective, that her revelations were calculated, that there are still chapters she has chosen not to share, and while some resist his manipulation, others falter, because Ian understands that uncertainty is often more corrosive than lies, and soon Mariah finds herself once again fighting not just a man, but the long shadow of mistrust he casts wherever he goes. Matt, meanwhile, watches his world collapse with a dawning awareness that survival may require the one thing he has avoided his entire life: accountability. And as legal pressure intensifies and former allies distance themselves, he faces the stark reality that the secrets he buried to protect his future have instead guaranteed its destruction, forcing him into an internal battle between self-preservation and confession, between maintaining what little control he has left and finally telling the truth, not as a strategy, but as surrender. Ian senses this fracture and exploits it mercilessly, pushing Matt toward a breaking point by revealing yet another layer of deception, exposing how Matt once manipulated outcomes, not just for himself and Mariah, but to curry favor with powerful figures in Genoa City, binding them to him through shared guilt, a revelation that sends shockwaves through the upper echelons of the city and ensures that Matt's fall will not be a solitary one. Amid the chaos, Mariah discovers that strength does not come from erasing the past, but from integrating it, from acknowledging that survival can coexist with responsibility, and that while she cannot undo what happened, she can choose how it defines her moving forward. And this realization fuels her determination to confront Ian not as a victim, but as a woman who has reclaimed her agency, leading to a tense, private showdown where she confronts him with evidence of his own hidden crimes, proof that his return was not fueled solely by revenge, but by desperation, by a looming threat that only his renewed influence could stave off. The encounter strips away Ian's carefully constructed aura of control, revealing flashes of panic beneath his smug exterior. And in that moment, Mariah understands that monsters are often driven not by power, but by fear of irrelevance, a truth she intends to use against him. As the walls close in, Ian makes one final, dangerous gamble, attempting to detonate everything at once by releasing a cascade of information designed to destroy Mariah, Matt, and anyone who has crossed him. But the plan backfires when the groundwork Mariah has laid allows the truth to be contextualized, exposing Ian's manipulations for what they are and turning his greatest weapon, information, into his undoing. The aftermath is messy, imperfect, and emotionally raw, but as Genoa City begins to stabilize, a new understanding emerges. Secrets may shape the past, but they do not have to own the future, and while scars remain, they become symbols of survival rather than shame, marking the end of Ian Ward's reign of psychological terror and the beginning of a hard-won reckoning that will echo through Genoa City for years to come, long after the shock of his return has faded into history. In the uneasy calm that follows Ian Ward's final gambit, Genoa City does not immediately heal, because trauma does not dissolve simply because the villain has been exposed, and Mariah quickly learns that reclaiming her life means navigating the quieter, more personal aftermath of public reckoning, the moments when applause fades and she is left alone with memories she once survived by locking away. Yet this time there is a difference, because she no longer feels hunted by them, and that shift, though subtle, becomes the foundation of something stronger than fear. People approach her differently now, not with suspicion, but with a tentative respect born of witnessing her choose honesty when silence would have been easier, and even those who once doubted her begin to acknowledge the courage it took to stand up to a man who had controlled her narrative for so long, while Matt, facing the consequences of his own choices, begins a slow, painful reckoning of his own, stripped of influence, reputation, and the illusion that intelligence alone could shield him from accountability, discovering too late that control without conscience always collapses under its own weight. Ian, no longer the unseen puppeteer, becomes a cautionary tale whispered through the city, a reminder that manipulation thrives only when people believe they are alone, and as his name fades from headlines, its impact lingers in the changed dynamics of relationships across Genoa City, alliances forged not through shared secrets, but through shared resolve to never let power operate unchecked again. Mariah's journey, however, is far from over, because growth is not a single triumphant moment, but a series of difficult, intentional choices, and she begins redefining what redemption means for her, not as erasure of the past, but as active responsibility, using her voice to support others who have survived coercion and control, transforming pain into purpose without allowing it to consume her identity. The town watches as she rebuilds, not perfectly, but honestly, and that authenticity becomes its own quiet revolution, inspiring others to confront truths they have long avoided, while the echoes of Ian's manipulations serve as a stark contrast to the transparency now taking root. In the end, Genoa City emerges altered, scarred yet wiser, having witnessed the destructive power of secrets and the liberating force of truth. And as Mariah looks toward a future no longer dictated by fear, she understands that while the past will always be part of her story, it no longer gets to decide how the story ends, closing the chapter on Ian Ward's reign not with revenge, but with resilience, accountability, and the hard-earned freedom of self-definition. And as the final echoes of this ordeal settle into memory, Mariah stands as living proof that survival is not defined by what was done to you, but by what you choose to do afterward, because even in the quiet moments when doubt resurfaces and old wounds ache, she now meets them with honesty instead of fear, understanding that strength is not the absence of pain but the refusal to let it rule her, and Genoa City, forever changed by Ian Ward's return and downfall, carries forward the lesson, etched into its collective conscience, that secrets thrive in darkness, but truth, once spoken, has the power to dismantle even the most carefully constructed lies, ensuring that the legacy of this chapter is not one of destruction, but of courage, accountability, and the enduring possibility of redemption.